Let's see, as chair for the National Strategy on Inuit Education and the founding chairperson for the Arctic Children and Youth Foundation, Mary Simon is an advocate for Inuit rights in Canada and abroad. Born in George River, northern Quebec, Mary has devoted her life to achieving social justice for Inuit and other Indigenous peoples in environmental, economic, and political arenas. As past president of ITK and the McKivick Corporation, and also with Inuit Circumpolar Conference, now Inuit Circumpolar Council. Mary was a senior negotiator during the Canadian constitutional discussions in the early 1980s, leading to the recognition of Aboriginal rights in the Constitution Act of 1982. She went on to be an ambassador for Circumpolar Affairs, Canadian ambassador to the Kingdom of Denmark, and Chancellor of Trent University. Mary has several honorary degrees of law from such universities as McGill, Carleton, and Trent. And on a personal note, I have to say that AIA, as a permanent participant in the Arctic Council, owes a debt of gratitude to Mary. It's quite possible that the permanent participants might not exist as a class of organizations had Mary not been so adamant in her work during those discussions and the formation of the Arctic Council. So without further ado, Mary Simon.
Thank you very much for that very kind introduction. It's a real pleasure to be here today, this morning. I don't think I've recovered from my jet lag yet, so if I don't make sense, you'll know why. I know that, you gave me a lot of credit for the work that I've done, but it's always been a real pleasure for me to do this kind of work on behalf of our people, and it has really given me 40 years of experience of working in these different fields, which I think later in life now, as you see me, which has been around 40 years since I started working in this field. It has really positioned me now in later life to better understand the complex and multidimensional and often sort of the confounding factors that need to be addressed in discussions such as this one about industrial development and sustained benefits to our local communities, as Frank and Delbert have articulated so well. And when I was first in Iceland, which was really in the early 90s, I was still the president of the Inuit Circumpolar Council, and I was participating in a meeting of the Arctic Environmental Protection Strategy, which was the organization amongst the 8 countries before the Arctic Council was created. And at that time, I was advocating for an improved relationship between the scientific community and Indigenous peoples and their knowledge systems. And this was a long time ago, and this is what I said at the time. Our challenge within the Arctic Environmental Protection Strategy is to devise a means by which necessary human and financial resources can be devoted to recognizing and working with the link between cultural diversity, differing knowledge systems, and a more profound understanding of environmental issues and ecological processes in the Arctic. So that was way back in the early 90s, and we were really at that time working hard to move the Indigenous peoples were working really hard to move the Arctic states towards the adoption of national policies and international agreements that would broaden Arctic security issues from a predominantly military focus to the development of collective environmental security that included the values, the lifestyles, and cultural identity of our indigenous peoples and societies in the north, in the Arctic. And such an agenda was inextricably linked to the aim of really sustainable human development. And we argued that meeting these challenges was essential to the long-term foundation of assuring circumpolar security, with priority being given to the well-being of the Arctic peoples and to safeguarding the northern habitats. And a lot of this has been brought up by the two previous speakers. So while much has changed over the last 20 to 30 years, some of these same challenges still remain with us. My understanding of the upstream stage of oil and gas activities is the exploration, extraction, and then bringing crude oil or natural gas reserves into production. Well, we in Canada are certainly in the midst of this. The production and transport of tar sands oils from northern Alberta is being hotly debated as we speak. And I would note our discussion could also be expanded to include the mining industry, given the recent upsurge in activity in the Arctic. At least in my region, it's very, very active. For local people, as we've all said, the risks and opportunities are very similar to those at play with the oil and gas industry. Because like Delbert said, we depend on land, animals for our livelihood, as well as marine mammals. So both oil and gas development in the oceans or mining on lands is both an area that we are very much aware and concerned about. My particular approach has always been to expand opportunities for future generations and to promote economic activity that creates wealth and human capital, while simultaneously safeguarding the environment and promoting the cultures of the region. Global market demands and technological progress offer new opportunities for expanded utilization of the Arctic's natural resources, and if properly managed, these opportunities can bolster sustainable growth and well-being in the region. But that's still always a big question mark, whether it's actually happening or not. Without appropriate precautionary measures, however, the livelihood of Indigenous peoples and other Northerners, as well as the viability of the Arctic environment, may be compromised. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Okay. So meeting the pressing economic needs of northern communities, especially those of Indigenous peoples, while respecting what we call sustainability principles, including environmental protection, human health, and respect for cultural diversity, will continue to challenge us, not just Northerners, but others as well, which includes governments and the industry. So capacity building, improved level of education, job creation, access to capital, infrastructure development, and are urgent requirements if the benefits from development are to be shared equitably by all peoples. Politically, the Arctic's Indigenous peoples are far better equipped now than in the past to participate forcefully and constructively in national, regional, and global political and economic decision-making. Over the past years, many positive changes have occurred in both the policy and legal relations